Joining me now to discuss if Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari's promises are fading is African affairs analyst, journalist and author Charles Aniagolu. He's in London. Thanks for joining us, Charles. So you're grading the report card. Give us some marks out of 10 for Muhammadu Buhari.
Well, first of all, I think Jerome Evans's report there was an excellent way to get into this discussion. It sort of sums up what's going on in the country, and it's very difficult to score President Buhari in terms of a report card of something like 1 to 10, because, I mean, Nigeria is besieged with so many problems. I mean, it's almost impossible for one head of state, one president, to come in and be able to sort out that problem. But having said that, on the issues that he's made sort of his, target, things like corruption, I think most Nigerians would score him quite high. The problem, of course, is that there are two types of corruption. There's the corruption of greed, which he's gone after, and there's the corruption of need, which is much more pervasive, which he's not been able to touch. But on that score, he's certainly making the right noises and the right overtures. And I think most people in Nigeria would say that they are impressed with the first tentative steps he's taking in that direction.
Yeah, looking at some of the stats here, he's axed 50 top civil servants, 40 ambassadors, 24,000 ghost employees, people who didn't show up to work but were picking up their paychecks. And this is saving Nigeria about $12 million per month. That's gutsy, right? He's used a blowtorch to fight corruption. Isn't he afraid of blowback, where you have disgruntled people who've lost their jobs who might get together and try and get rid of him?
Well, that's a very good point, because, of course, you've got the establishment, and the establishment in Nigeria is notorious for its official criminality. That has gone on for decades, and they're extremely difficult to dislodge. Having said that, President Buhari was a former military dictator. He's been in the annals of power, sort of the corridors of power in Nigeria. He knows exactly the sort of people to go after, and he's not afraid to do it at all. So yes, there's the potential for people sort of getting together and saying we're going to get rid of him, but they can't do that for at least the next 4 years. So that gives him a little bit of time to start to consolidate his position in that direction. And if he's able to do it well, as the elections proved, ordinary Nigerians who are supporting him quite robustly this time are likely to vote him back in again. The fact, of course, is that he can't do it all in one term.
Yeah, oil prices are very low. The economy is so reliant on oil. Are we going to see more of the types of visits that we've seen from President Erdogan? Are we going to see other heads of state perhaps showing up in Nigeria and striking trade deals with Nigeria? Is that his plan?
Well, Nigeria is quite desperate, and I don't think it's unfair to use that word, to reach out to countries like Turkey and a whole slew of others around the world to try and develop new sort of economic relations and find a way out of its economic quagmire. The problem, of course, is that most people would say that they have not seen any discernible plan from President Buhari about how to diversify the economy away from oil, and that is what will worry many Nigerians and also potential investors. But certainly the government in Nigeria appears to be, its strategy appears to be to reach out to as many countries as possible and try and develop new economic ties in the hope that, it'll attract investments that will improve the economy in Nigeria.
Yeah, and now finally, Boko Haram. I mean, pound for pound, matching them up against even Daesh. When you look at pure or sheer death toll, they've recently killed more people than Daesh have. It's an incredible insurgency, and it seems to be like a game of whack-a-mole where you put them down here and they pop up somewhere else. Are you confident that he can eliminate the threats of Boko Haram?
Well, the government's answer will be that you cannot completely eliminate every single element within Boko Haram, but their argument is that they have managed to decimate the group, neutralize them to the point where they are containable. They no longer have caliphate ambitions because they don't have the capacity to, to carry out such an ambition. So what they do now is, carrying out sort of attacks here and there, suicide bomb attacks and so on, in a kind of disparate way, but that in terms of what they were previously, the threat they constituted to the Nigerian state, because at the time they had territorial ambitions, the government will say that that is no longer possible. Now, we will, of course, have to wait and see as the months sort of progress to see whether or not that, in fact, is the case. But certainly, factually on the ground, the number of attacks from Boko Haram have, reduced considerably, and it's no longer the sort of wanton, indiscriminate, bold attacks that you used to have, where sort of dozens and perhaps even hundreds of gunmen would go and attack a city for several hours. I mean, they're doing it in a much more disparate manner now, and so to that extent, that may well buttress the government's point that it's managed to bring it down to a containable level.
Thank you very much for joining us, Charles Aniagolu in London.